G'day guys, GeIL20 here and welcome back to Oceania. So last week I said that I was going to do a short episode because we're going to do 2 videos this week. I just decided to do a same old regular length episode because I just got so into making these pedestrian malls and working on the downtown, the CBD. It's just good times all around, so I just kept on working. But I for some reason, like, you're gonna see me start demolishing some things and then I'll start plopping down the town hall, and then all of a sudden it's all built because for some reason my footage just got, I don't know, deleted, disappeared. I don't know what happened to it, but yeah, you're gonna see pretty quickly. I start messing around with some of the town halls and figuring out what that's gonna look like, and bam, there it is, built already. So yeah, we're gonna kick off this episode with the town hall. I wanted to make sure that every square inch of my map, not to sound like a broken record, but I do want to make sure that everywhere on the map does feel quite unique, quite different, and that includes the CBD. I don't want it just to feel like all the same type of area. I do want there to be a mix of historical elements, a bit of like shopping districts and Chinatown and like different districts that are going to feel very unique. And this little area down here, I wanted it to feel like it was where the town hall was, a bit more historical type of area with a bit of a parkland. And I say parkland, but I just mean a plaza. And that's what we built down here. We've got the town hall, which is a little bit smaller than I was originally planning to build, but this building is just so damn nice. Ended up using it. I can't remember off the top of my head what building it is. You might want to hit me up, but it's so good. Got a little clock tower on top of there, and I put a church behind it. I was taking some slight inspiration from Town Hall in Sydney. Of course, this is kind of where my main inspiration's coming from, but it's probably a bit more reminiscent of some of the other town halls in other places, other cities around Australia. I was looking at a whole bunch just to get some inspiration, and this building just sort of seemed to be the best. There's not like a huge amount of variety of town halls on the Steam Workshop. There's a lot more modern ones, and then there's some that are either very European or very American. But Australian architecture and Australia city planning, I mean, we're sort of taking inspiration, we're taking ideas from a whole bunch of places around the world. We seem to be still establishing our own style, which somebody did mention that they do like that about this series, is that, or at least I like that about Australian cities, is that it's it's doing its own thing. It's a little bit different to a lot of other places around the world. I think New Zealand's pretty similar. So yeah, you've probably seen a bit of that. And the main bulk of today's episode is working on these pedestrian malls. We're going to be building 2 of them in today's build. One of them is going to be a shopping district, and then the other one is going to be more for office blocks and banks and financial areas. It's, I don't know, got a bit more of a corporate type of area, whereas the first one's definitely a shopping district. And it's honestly really fun when you start seeing people wander around the shopping district, pop in and out of shops, and it's just a real hub where people are gathering, which is exactly what I wanted. So we'll see that pretty shortly. But at the moment, we're just filling in some gaps, and like I said, I'm just trying really hard to stick with a style around particular blocks of areas. You know, I don't want to just go, these are all just tall buildings because this is downtown. Nah, we're going to try and make things feel pretty unique. So you can see some areas have got pubs on every corner, and then other districts have got a bit more of a historical type of architecture going on. But I guess overall, I really wanted to make the CBD feel very dense. I wanted water wall buildings pretty much on every corner, only really opening up to plazas and, some spots underneath these big tall skyscrapers have got slightly more open space. But besides that, I wanted it to be a pretty dense CBD, and the reason why is I haven't really done anything quite like that before. Most of my downtowns have been fairly open. They sort of, we do have a couple of blocks with wall-to-wall buildings, but not as much as you would sort of expect for someone who's been playing for as long as I have. So it was sort of fun to do that, just something totally different to the type of planning I usually do. But yeah, you can see these are the tallest buildings around here. Most of the buildings are from Sydney in real life, and they just look so damn nice. This is by most of these buildings, if not all of them, are by Robert, who's I mean, I'm pretty blessed to have a guy like that building some custom assets for like Australian assets. I mean, he's just been totally killing it, and I've just been wanting to use them for forever, so here's a good excuse to. And now we're starting to work around this shopping district, and what I'm doing is I'm actually building it along this road, because pretty shortly we're going to change that road into a pedestrian mall. And it actually took me a little while to figure out which roads I was going to convert into pedestrian malls, and the reason why is because I didn't really want to just choose randomly. I wanted to try and make sure that I'm choosing the right roads that would realistically be converted into these pedestrian only strips. And it took me a little while because there's not a huge amount of space in Dundee. This CBD is not massive. There's only a few roads, and a lot of them are main roads, and a lot of them don't stretch for a long period of time. So it's sort of like, all right, got to find the ones that have a bit of length to them so they don't feel too abrupt, and also ones that are going to feel realistic. So pretty much this is the one that I thought would be the best fit underneath a lot of the big skyscrapers. Pretty reminiscent of Pitt Street Mall in Sydney, which is where I was taking most of my inspiration from. And Pitt Street Mall just stretches for one block, and it's mostly quite expensive retail shops and clothing lines, and they've got like food courts, and there's a Westfield. So it's like a very typical type of mall, and it's honestly pretty nice because there are a lot of these much older buildings that sit alongside it, mixed with some more modern architecture, some H&Ms and JB Hi-Fis and stuff like that. So I wanted to show that this one also has that sort of mix between, you can see that it's been changed. It was once a road, and now it's just been converted. Which is pretty much essentially what I did. I just converted that road, and unfortunately, so I'm using this pedestrian path, and unfortunately, because you're trying to encourage buildings to still spawn on this road, even though it's pedestrian only, there are trucks that are going to come along there to deliver goods to those buildings, and I didn't really want that. I mean, it's just, I don't know, kind of unrealistic having these big trucks just plowing through there. So I decided to convert these buildings that sit on this mall, decided to convert them to procedural objects, and that way, instead of having these as actual commercial buildings, they're going to be parks. So this whole mall is now a park, and that's how I'm going to encourage people to come here, because I did want this area to be like desirable. I do want people to come here. I do want the buildings around here to benefit from it being a park, and there being quite a lot of business around here. So I will actually end up placing down a bunch of commercial little cubes inside these buildings too, so that people are shopping around here. We are generating a bit of cash from that commercial district, and the main reason why people are coming here is because it's just a park. And yeah, it's fun because people are here, and it's just great. And because this is stretched over 2 blocks rather than just the one, I did just a great little pedestrian crossing just there, and that just absolutely works just so well. It's so great seeing cars stop and people walk across. And I've got an invisible path, so people are using that to walk through this mall. And little, I don't know if I've already done it or not, but I will be placing down some cubes that are little parks, so people can hang out in there and visit them. And in terms of detail, I mean, it's really hard in these areas because, to build the detailed atmosphere of a mall can be kind of tricky in City Skylines. It's kind of easy to build something that looks decent from afar, but as soon as you get down nice and close, it tends to feel a little bit unrealistic because it just doesn't have the hustle and bustle of what a real mall really represents. So I did go to town. Get it? Pun? Yeah, great. Did go to town trying to make this as detailed as possible. I'm not going to detail absolutely every single block quite like this, but for something so significant in Dundee, I thought, better make this thing look pretty nice. So I will end up placing more park benches. I've got some lights, these hanging lights that just look pretty nice on top, suspended from these buildings. And I think just seeing the people walking around here just really makes the atmosphere come alive. And of course, we do need a name for this mall. We don't have a name for it. I don't really want to call it Pitt Street Mall. I want to call it something else. I don't know what the street would have been called before, but yeah. like, you know, hit me up if you got a name. And I've got these really great commercial buildings that you can just sort of splice into these buildings. They just look great. They're just shop fronts. They're meant to be spliced into other buildings. I've also grabbed some awnings too. I feel like awnings are on every single building in Australia, and they don't really seem to be the case in City Skylines. And a lot of people don't upload buildings with awnings. I don't know if that's a thing, or whether Australian buildings just have more awnings, or whether people just forget to add awnings to these buildings, or whether they're doing that on purpose. I don't really know. I'm sure it's probably on purpose so that there's you know, if you want to add your own awning, then it's kind of a bit more consistent, which is what I'm doing. These awnings, by the way, are great. They just grabbed them from the Steam Workshop, and they're just props, and you just splice them together and they look pretty nice. Some billboards too on some of these buildings. Now, I think this is going to be the absolute game changer, and that's adding in custom billboards. We are working on some custom billboards. If you are some of those people who have been building some of those custom graphics, making some of those custom graphics for Oceania, look, we're still working on them. We've got some asset creators turning some things into props, and we've got some custom vehicles driving around. Yeah, you might even see a couple of just custom vehicles driving. I don't know, if you've got a keen eye, just like hit me up in the comments if you saw one. But yeah, we've got a couple of custom businesses and brands that are going to be driving around, delivering things, and billboarded on the side of buildings. So yeah, that's going to come. But at the moment, I've just placed down 2, which is a little bit pathetic. But I just thought, you know, two's enough just to sell the vibe. But they are generic, real life brands that I'd prefer not to do. You know, I don't know. I'm really torn, because I'm gonna of course use some brands, because I think there's some assets that are just too good not to use. For instance, the Woolworths that you saw me place down in the last episode, well, 2 episodes ago. You know, I don't want to just not use that because I'm being stubborn and don't want to use any real life brands. But I do want to try and use as many custom Oceania ones as possible. But the billboards, they're coming, and when they do come, then we're gonna just throw them on every bloody building over there, because I think it'll just add so much. But we've moved on. We're not in the commercial district anymore. We are now focusing on this other mall that I wanted to make fairly different, you know, have a real different vibe. So not shopping this time. Instead, we're gonna have a pretty financial type of area. So I'm going to be placing banks along here, and again, when we get those custom bank billboards, they're going to be the ones that go on the side of some of these buildings that we place around here. But you can see I have changed a bit of the road layout around here, because, I mean, 2 reasons. I wanted to add this big building in. It's perfect for an area quite like that, and I've just nestled in between 2 roads. And I also just wanted to make the road layout a little bit more interesting than what I was doing. A lot of straight lines, a lot of grids. I did speak about this in the last episode. And I just, you know, I'm just on a bit of a mission to make sure that my roads just do slightly more interesting things than just a lot of straight roads going on forever. And people did actually mention that I was saying that LA is very flat. You're right, LA is not completely flat. There are a lot of mountains around LA, and I think a lot of the city does expand out into less flat areas. And I think I was being very general with my statement before. Probably didn't do enough research. I've been to LA twice, and those areas that I went to felt very flat, at least compared to a lot of other places that I've been to. And additionally, of course, the grids aren't as straight as I was making them out to be, but I think when you translate that to City Skylines, you know, if you look at LA and you go, okay, that road goes straight for, I don't know, like 15 blocks, and then you try and do something similar in City Skylines and you have a road that goes straight for, I don't know, 7 blocks, 8 blocks, 10 blocks, then that it's a lot of straight. It's a lot of straight road. And yeah, I kind of like to avoid that sort of stuff, because I think it just makes things a little bit more interesting when they have to meet in different angles and different types of locations. But anyway, we are working on this this little strip down here. So the idea behind this pedestrian mall, and it's not a pedestrian mall, it's just I don't know, I guess still a pedestrian mall? Is it a pedestrian mall if it's not dedicated to shopping. I don't know, let me know. But anyway, this road, this pedestrian mall, I'm going to keep calling it that. The idea behind it is that there's this fork in the road, alright? So there's these two roads and they go either side of this building that I've placed with the green spike on it. And maybe back in the day when that was first built, that road was first laid out, and that building, which looks fairly old, was first built there. You know, there was a reason why they had the roads do that, but these days they don't really need this second road. You know, if anything, it adds more congestion on both those main roads that they made up to. So what they've done instead is they've converted this one into a pedestrian only street, and the other road then just handles all the traffic, which I don't think would be that much considering it's still a fairly small road and there are some more major roads around it. And I think that's what happens quite a lot within cities. They change roads, or at least they stop roads from connecting to certain areas to then have better traffic flow on some of the more main roads. Rather than having multiple intersections on some of these bigger roads, traffic is now able to just use some of these bigger ones and flow a lot better. At least that's the idea, at least that's what I think is going on. So this is now pedestrian only, and source of inspiration for this one is Martin Place in Sydney. This is a big stretch of pedestrian mall and a lot of banks, a lot of big businesses around here. And you can see it, like jumping back onto that site where you can slide around the different dates. You can see when they converted this, changed it to a pedestrian mall, and you can sort of see why. You know, this little tiny road, I don't think was doing a huge amount. You know, if they're going to change any roads around here to be pedestrian only, it'd be something like this, because this road is very random and there's intersections that would be just so chockers these days, full of cars. You know, back in the day when there's not as many cars driving around, then sure, they can justify having roads do some weird things around these intersections. But these days, you've got a lot of cars, you know, you've got to try and encourage them to use some of the more main roads so that they can get a bit more better traffic flow. I would like to do a little bit more detail around here. So maybe when I come back and add those banks, be nice to add a little extra that's going around here. But I do really like the fountains that we've got just here as the entrance. They just seem to frame the strip just really nicely. And I would just kept it pretty basic, really. Just some plants and some lampposts and some benches. And a little later, you will see that I will place down some cafes that are going to sit just within some of these buildings, because I think there'll be some cafes that just nestled amongst there. Okay, kind of it. That's kind of it for this episode. I mean, far out. That was kind of a fast commentary for me. I feel like there's a lot of footage not here. I don't know why it's not here, but I don't know, maybe I was just being a bit brutal with some of the footage that I was keeping. I think maybe I need to just record slightly more footage next time. Or maybe just be careful when I delete footage, because I've obviously deleted a bunch. But anyway, you can see the stuff that we did in this episode, in these cinematics, particularly in the skyline, I think are looking pretty nice. And the downtown, I feel like, is looking pretty much complete. But anyway, guys, that is it for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed seeing Dundee start to take shape. The CBD is really starting to expand out, and I'm pretty keen to start expanding out a bit more of the suburbs. Get the city really vibing, because still looking pretty underdeveloped. So I'd like to get this thing a little bit more happening. Before we go, I want to give a special shout out to the wonderful people supporting the channel on Patreon. Compacted Germ, Gibber Gooseberry, Aces Punk, Eric, Stefan Lagarde, Thomas Riley, Nick Kashab, Ginnister, Not Validated, and Sebastian Hasselberg. Thank you all so much for support, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!